Hello, this tutorial is going to cover lighting inside of layout, just some of the random little quirks about it and some other things. First, when you load your scene inside of layout, you might notice that your scene is not sized correctly. If that's the case, go to here to increase and decrease grid size, and that will tell layout what size you want to mess with on the grid. Like say if your light started out way too big, maybe the size of the entire object, you can be using these under the view tab to change the size and get the lights in a way that's much easier to work with. Let me see here, grab this light. The default light you start out with is a distant light, and you can check what kind of light it is by pressing P, opening this, and this little tab right here shows you all the different kinds of lights that you have and what your current light is. Distant lights are, in a sense, like the sun. They're not actually from this point right here. They're coming out of the edge of the scene, say over here, and projecting on the entire scene. It's just a good default light for lighting things and looking at it. I don't really use it in my final renders though. The next kind of light is an area light. This is kind of a general light. It almost imitates the lights that photographers use when doing photo shoots and things like that. This one you can actually move inside around the scene here, and rotation doesn't really affect it much, but location does, and it's good for lighting from a certain area, say up here, things like that. And now that we're on to these lights, I might as well cover in fall off. Fall off tells it where to end its drawing distance of the light. Like say you do linear, it's doing a calculation, so it goes out 1 meter and the light starts to die over that. So it's 100% here, and after 1 meter, the light is completely dead. You can turn that up, and you see it lights up a greater area, or you can do a different sorts of calculation, like inverse distance. That's a little bit more realistic of a calculation of light, or inverse distance squared, which is the most realistic calculation of light, pretty much. Just kind of gives you an interesting looking effect here. The next kind of light is a dome light. This is kind of like a distant light in the sense that it does illuminate from one direction, and it is not affected by movement within the scene. It's a little bit more taxing than a distant light though. And you can see here it's a little bit grainy because it requires anti-aliasing to fully show up. And I'm not going to cover anti-aliasing right now. I'll cover that in a rendering video. Just for now, know that these lights are really, really taxing and take the most amount of memory out of any light to see. Also, you can only see lights when they are rendered or in PPR. If you see it in the shaded mode here, you're not actually going to see the full effect of the light. Just kind of a general idea of where the light's coming from. Your next light's linear. I don't really know enough about this light to talk about it, so not going to cover it. From what I understand, it lights along this linear path this way, but I could be totally wrong about that. I have no idea. I believe that's it. I guess I can check it real quick. Does it still light the same along those? No? I really don't know what that is. Ingone is a new light I haven't messed with. That's new to 11.5, or if it's not new to 11.5, it never showed up in this menu before until I got 11.5. Photometric can project an image type light around itself. I haven't looked into this enough to mess with it either. Sorry about that. No, this isn't really a perfect tutorial. Point light is the least taxing of all the lights. It takes the least amount of memory to use, and it's a lot like an area light, except it takes a lot less memory, has a little bit less shading attached to it, and there's just a couple subtle differences. These are really good for candles because since they use so little, you can have multiple ones of these lights and animate them moving up and down with keyframes to try to get like a wavy effect of fire, things like that. And on all these lights, forgot to mention this, you can change the color over here, and generally if you're going for light coming off a candle or something, you want kind of just a barely tinted down yellow to get that sort of soft light look, as opposed to making it look like it's coming out of a fluorescent light, which would be solid white or maybe a little bit on the blue side. And ambient intensity is kind of the setting that lets you know the least amount of light you want to have anywhere. So you turn it up, you know, you'll make sure nothing is lower than that. Generally I turn it all the way down, but sometimes I leave it up a little bit if I want to fill in shadows so they don't look so black. The next kind of light is a spherical light. This is kind of like an area and a point light mixed together. It is more taxing than an area light, but it's used for certain different things. You might just want to play around with these and see what they do. And you can just mess with any of these settings and always reset them back. The last light is a spotlight, and this light is really neat because it's actually a light that you can aim, like the name suggests, like a spotlight. And this is where I'm going to show you guys volumetric light, because this is really cool. If you render it with F9, well, actually I'm just going to do VPR so we can see it. You can see it's projecting in this shape over here, but say if you want it to look like it's coming through dust, you could turn on volumetric lighting, and the light, you can physically see all the light inside of the spotlight. And you can turn up and down the angle with the cone angle. So you want a bigger spotlight, or maybe if you want it to look more like a laser, you could turn it down more. And you can turn the soft edge angle up and down, which is kind of the feathering on the edge of the light here. And you can project an image on here if you wanted to, like shadow puppets or whatnot. Let's see here. Lens flare is kind of an interesting option. You turn that on, and this will only be seen if you render it from the camera. It'll put a lens flare coming off of the light, and that's kind of useful just for a cinematic effect. I really don't use it in Lightwave because I normally end up doing my lens flares in something like After Effects later on. But that's completely up to you when you finally render. It's generally good to have more than one light in a scene just to get a little bit more even lighting. And the way you can do that, you can press Control C, and actually you need to be here for that to show up. I'm not sure why, but don't go to VPR when you do it. Control C, you can clone whatever item that way, and if you clone it, it'll stick it right on top of the other one, so you may not notice it at first. But you can move this light around, move it over here, and generally if you have more than one light, you don't want their intensities to both be 100, just because it'll look crazy weird. So for some reason it's not wanting me to have two area lights today, and my lighting is really messed up. I'm sorry about that, guys. I've been trying to fix this all day and I don't know why. Lighting is just broken for right now. I gotta restart my computer. But you can have multiple lights within a scene, and to get rid of something in Lightwave, you need to click on it. Actually, this is what I'm talking about. Like, there's two lights here. You guys can see that. But I go to lights, I look at all lights in the scene, it only shows one light. I don't know why. But to get rid of a light, or any object, you press minus instead of delete. And there must be at least one light. See, how is that? It thinks this one's not here. Well, whatever. I guess I'll redo this in part of the tutorial sometime. You press minus, and that will clear that item from the scene. And you can do that with lights. You have to have at least one light in the scene and one camera. However, it won't let you delete those. But that's pretty much it for lighting. You guys can just mess around with it. And a good idea to look at lights is you can look at these lighting diagrams you find online, like 3-point lights and things like that, where there's key lights, backlights, fill lights. It just gives you kind of a general idea of how lighting is set up for scenes. There's a couple more complicated ones, like 5-point lighting scenes. You see these here. This gets really complicated. But generally, if you're just rendering one object, you just do 3 or 5. Well, that's it for now. I guess if you guys have any questions, put them down in the comment section below, or send me an email or something. Whatever you guys need to do, get a hold of me. Alright, see you guys later.